In this video, Jordan Peterson talks about seeing life from a new lens.
Now, you've got your meaning shining forth like mad, and I think part of the reason that children are so attractive is because for them, the meaning is just shining at them like mad. That's why they're always wandering around like this, you know, and it's really fun to watch kids because they give you a taste of that again. You know, because kids have to pay you so you don't throw them out the window because they're very annoying, right? They're always crying, they're completely useless, they just lay there and they don't do anything, you know, and they wake you up at 3 in the morning and annoy you. And so, you know, because you're selfish and mean, you need something in return, and so they smile at you, but they do other things. They're really, 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 really comical. So they're a blast to watch and play with. But one of the things they really do is they remove the blinders from you while you're around them. Because, you know, you go out in like a little forest with a 2.5-year-old. It's very annoying because the bloody things, they just wander around randomly, you know. So you've got no goal-directed, nothing goal-directed is going to happen with a 2.5-year-old. But that's kind of cool because it frees your mind from your goal-directed narrowness. And you can watch the 2-year-old look at all these things that you haven't looked at for 20 years because you already looked at them once and now you just have to see your memory. And then you think, wow, that really is cool. You know, they'll bring you something and they'll tell you it's cool, and you know, maybe it's a shiny piece of aluminum, a gum wrapper. Well, you think it's a gum wrapper because that's what you see when you look at it because you've already built up gum wrapper representation and you just lay it on that. That isn't what the kid sees. God only knows what they're looking at, you know. Maybe how the light reflects off the aluminum prismatically and how it glitters and how cool it is that it can be folded up and how light it is. It's like, and they're looking at it like this. And, you know, I think it's because their cortex isn't very well developed and they haven't built the inhibitory structures that stop them from seeing meaning shining forth. You know, and you might think, well, is there any evidence for that? And there actually is quite a bit of evidence for that, you know. I mean, one piece of evidence is that if you take a cat's brain out, and you just leave it with a hypothalamus and a spinal cord, it's hyper-exploratory. It runs around like everything's interesting. It's pretty weird behavior for a thing that doesn't have a brain. You know, you kind of think that once you don't have a brain, nothing would be interesting. It depends on how much of your brain you have. And there are people who've experienced that, by the way. There was a famous case of a conductor who had a very serious brain injury. And it basically blew out his hippocampus. So he couldn't put any more information in from short-term attention to long-term storage. And he wrote these articles, these massive page-long journals, multi-page-long journals. And all he'd write is, it's as if I'm seeing everything for the first time. It's as if I'm seeing everything for the first time. It's as if I'm seeing everything for the first time. And he was wandering around in a constant state of awe. You know, and his wife would come to visit him. He couldn't remember any of the things that had happened to him. And he'd just be blown out of the water to see her, you know, because he didn't see his memories. And he'd say, it's just like I'm seeing you for the first time. And, you know, he was seeing her for the first time. Because the access to the inhibitory structures that were directing his attention were gone. He was an interesting case, too, because now and then he'd sit down to play the piano, you know, and he'd have an epileptic seizure, and then he could play the piano. And he could play just like he used to play, you know. So it was like he had to switch brain modes and the mechanism for switching was damaged. So he'd have to have a little seizure and then he could lay out these like Beethoven sonatas like a mad dog. And then at the end he'd have a little seizure and he'd come back to, it's as if I'm seeing everything for the first time. You know, and I think part of the reason that psychedelic drugs proved so attractive to people in the 60s and have proved attractive to people since the bloody beginning of time is because in some sense that's what they do. It's like, poof, your memory representations, they're gone. And what are you seeing? God only knows. But it isn't what you expect. And maybe it's what's there. Well, maybe not, too.